Welcome to the Rahway All Day Podcast, where the stories, people, and moments that define Rahway come to life. Hosted by Mayor Raymond Giacobbe, this show takes a closer look at the history, culture, and future of the city. Each episode features in-depth conversations with the individuals shaping Rahway's path forward. Whether you've lived here all your life, are new to the community, or just want to learn more, this is the place for you. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rahway All Day Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Mayor Raymond Giacobbe. It's truly an honor to have my guest here today, Miss Linda Carter. Linda is an Assemblywoman in the 22nd District. Her life has been fighting for the underprivileged here in Union County. She represents the city of Rahway here in Trenton. She's a good friend, someone I truly admire, and it's an honor to have her on our show. Miss Linda Carter, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for having me. This is amazing. I love this. Absolutely, truly love the ability to be able to do this and to come here and sit down and have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. You know, when I spoke with my staff about doing a podcast, I wanted to have individuals. It's called Rahway All Day because it's Rahway centric. You represent our city in 22nd Legislative District in Trenton. You do a lot of great things for our city. And this is an opportunity to speak about those things for our residents here in Rahway to get to know you a little bit better as well as I do. And I know they're going to love you just as much as I do.
Thank you.
You're truly a person who loves the people they represent. You fight for the people that you represent. And I truly admire that. And it's an honor to have you, on the podcast. So I guess we could start off with, it's kind of the typical question that I usually get sometimes. Why'd you get involved in politics? What inspired you? And how did you, get to this point?
Getting to this point, and as I reflect on things that I've done and things that I was groomed to do and everything, I think it is a perfect fit. But when I look at it, I always tell everybody, I got into politics kicking and screaming. This was never, ever something that was on my radar, had the ability to, thought, I want to go into politics. I'm getting into public administration. I actually have a business background and all. Okay. Even teaching, farthest thing from the world. No, I won't get into teaching. I had, my aunt, my father's sister, and my grandmother's sister who were in teaching and everything. And I saw it, but I was like, no, I could never do that. Mm-hmm. And look what I'm doing. For over 20 years now, I'm doing both teaching, educating, and I'm also into politics. So really, it's, my desire to serve the community is really what really got me to say, yes, I'm going to do this. Was I approached? Absolutely. Asked to run and run for the Plainfield City Council. I was in a transition. I had come out of business working in corporate America and was not even sure I was going to stay in New Jersey.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, you never know where the path will lead you in life. And
absolutely
similar story, myself. It's not as if, I grew up wanting to be the mayor of the city of Rahway. I always had a need to serve. I coached in the community. I always given back, and it kind of finds you, right? It kind of finds you. And I think that's why you and I connected as well as we did, because we have a lot of things in common. And those are just, several of those things that you just mentioned. It's the want to serve, right. And, finding that path that you're going to be able to make a difference. And you and I, we've talked about this in the past of, we love what we do because we get to have a direct impact on the people in our community. You represent a district, I represent a city, and it's important for us to connect with our constituents, because if we don't, then we really don't know what we need to do to serve them.
Absolutely. And it's also about representation. So,
yes.
When you look at what when policies are being made today and how they were being made over 20 years ago,
yes.
Very different. The individuals who are actually saying yes and no to things that, are put into law. So very different look of who's making those decisions today. And even so, in the clincher that really got me to say yes to going into politics and making that run is because when I received a phone call, probably the third phone call to say, hey, listen, we want you to run. We think you can do this. Back in my mind, yes, my mother and, in church and all the other things that I did my involvement growing up through high school and even my involvement through my sorority organization, I always found my way into leadership positions. So this was just an opportunity. But when I realized that it was a room full of men sitting around a table who were calling to say, listen, you have the skills. And I'm like, there's no women there. So yes, this is an opportunity for me. I believe that there needed to be another voice in the room.
Absolutely.
And I took that opportunity. And since then, I've been able to move from being on Plainfield City Council to a freeholder, now commissioner, and on to the state level.
Yeah, and you said it before, perspective matters, right? When laws are being made, you need different perspectives. You need different people at the table that from different upbringings. And for you to recognize that, it was more than just about an opportunity for you. It was an opportunity for women to have a seat at that table.
Absolutely.
And, kudos for recognizing that and understanding that, and I tell this to my son all the time, there's things out there that are bigger than you. And that right there is something that you recognize that, had to be done, and you stepped up. And it's not easy. It's not easy to be a public official, an elected official.
It's not.
And it takes time away from your family. Sometimes it can be frustrating at times.
And it's hard sometimes to balance it. And you have to really kind of take a look at it. And sometimes you just got to stop, take a breather, and kind of look at the big picture.
Yep.
And then figure out, and it's okay. I had to learn sometimes to say, it's okay to say no to something.
Yes.
Or to prioritize what you have to do. You're not saying no because of the fact that you don't like it or you don't want to do it. You're just prioritizing, and it may just move. It may not be today, but I can get to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you just have to learn it, and you have to learn how to balance it.
And sometimes things, as much as you would like to do them or you'd want to do them, timing is everything, and a lot of factors play into the decision making. And unfortunately, sometimes people don't understand the different factors that play into those decisions that are made. So as an educator, do you feel that your perspective as a teacher gives you like a unique insight when you're sitting there, in these caucuses, when these bills are talked about that affects education? Because to your point, there's a lot of lawyers, there's a lot of professionals, there's a lot of people at that table. But there are very few teachers that are in the state legislative body. So, do you feel that your skill set as an educator helps when these laws are being discussed and put into effect?
Absolutely, I do. Currently I am a teacher, and I work in the Passaic Public School District. And all public information, don't hide anything. Very, very forthcoming. And I've been doing this, for about 20, I think this is my 21st year in education. But I do something, it's called work-based learning. So I help our students, our juniors and our seniors, I work at a high school, getting jobs. And that to me gives a very huge perspective when we're doing things, because it's about, when our youth and what is it for them as they move on? What is it? Let's get them some experience so that they're exposed to the business side of it. Yeah. And it's unique because also I think that we have to have for our kids, our students, it's that work-based soft skills also that they need to understand. Yes. What are some of the proper etiquette things to do? But also, listen, you can do whatever you want to do. And there's so many opportunities. Let's take advantage of those opportunities, and we're putting them out there. That, you may not always have to go to a 4-year school. Yeah. You may start at a 2-year school.
Or trade school.
School. And that's important because when we look at it, several years ago, everything was, you had a balance, and then it was everything pushed towards only going to 4-year colleges. Yeah. And all. Not everybody's going to do that right away. Yeah. But it's also not just our kids moving out of high school it's also about furthering when you get into that work field. What is it that New Jersey is doing to make sure that we can have people stay here? What kind of training do we have? And I think that that's important. I think that it holds. As vice chair of transportation and independent authorities and even chair of higher education, I'm looking at it, affordability. I'm looking at, perspective of, okay, what does it take for our kids to be at any one of the schools that they want to go to here in New Jersey? But after they get educated in New Jersey, what is it to keep them here?
Yes.
And we have to look at it as we're looking to make bills and everything. We have to really, and I think my perspective of looking at it and being an educator, I'm a little bit focused on that to make sure that, our residents have the skills, they're working collaboratively, there's diversity because New Jersey is a very diverse
Yes.
state,
Yep.
but there's that opportunity for all.
Yeah, and you know, you hit the nail on the head when you talk about educating our children is one aspect of it, but getting them ready for life is a completely different other aspect. And you know, when we're creating, you know, when I should say when you and your colleagues are in Trenton, you know, and you're putting these bills together and you're creating these laws, you know, for you to have an understanding of what the needs are of our young people, because, you know, it's tough out there for them. It really is. I hear from a lot of young people, you know, I was blessed. My wife and I were blessed. We started our family young. By the time we were in our late 20s, we were going to be able to save up enough money to buy a house. And I'll tell you right now, that money we saved up 20 years ago to buy a house, 18 years ago to buy a house would not be enough now, not even be close to enough. And the house is 3 times more than it was 15 years ago.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you put them, you know, in this extreme debt coming out of college. You don't give them the real skills they actually need to succeed. And then we burden them with these huge expenses.
And it has a lot to do with when you look at the huge expenses. You know, yes, it's expensive to live in New Jersey, but we also have to have our workforce be able to give them the livable wages that they need. You know, right now you have so many individuals, our young populations that are, you know what, they can't, when they're getting out of college, you know, it's taking them until they're like closer to the end of the 20s to be able to really get out on their own because of their financial debt of being educated. And a lot of them, because of the fact that they can't afford it, you know, they're going elsewhere and everything. And that's what we have to really take a look at when we're honing in, you know, we have to look at the realities of everybody that lives in our state, but being able to our workforce development, having us to be able to move up, you know, in our businesses that we're doing. But we also have to look at, you know, we have a shortage of teachers. We have a shortage in the medical field. We have shortages popping up. We have carpentry, building trades. That shortage, but what are we doing to make sure, you know what, yes, we have people that are interested in it, but when they can't go from, you know, either high school right into it and being able to do it. I have so many students who actually are doing the piece of it that they have to go to class, but they're also working jobs, you know, and that's in high school to help with their families. And that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot when you're looking
at
one person and you're contributing to your household. We have to be able to, you know what, turn that around. You have to get the education so you can make a higher income for your family and as you're preparing, and that you don't have to go back home and everything and be with your parents when your parents are like, hey, you know, you were away to college. I'm empty nester here. You know, and all of a sudden, oops, 4 years later, you're back, you know? But, you know, we have to do that balance.
And you know, you've worked with, you know, Governor Phil Murphy on passing the $15 minimum wage here in the state of New Jersey before it was the national minimum wage. And, you know, I feel that New Jersey has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to, you know, these type of bills and these laws that we put into place. And we find that the country, you know, slowly catches up, but New Jersey is definitely a trailblazer, I believe, in many categories. So what motivates you when you're drafting or supporting certain bills? Where does the motivation come from? The I guess you could say the inspiration as well.
My constituents, the people, I represent them. So it's really, I'm deeply rooted in the needs of the community. So we have to make sure that we're bringing the right resources, but it's the community. I'm working with my mayors. I'm working with the council. I'm working with our Board of Education. What is it that really we need to bring here? What do we need help with? But it's also a matter of, you know, some of the bill ideas directly from the concerns of constituents. I remember when I first got into office, I probably was the first 3 weeks. And I had one of the teacher associations, they were like, we need to have a meeting with you. And I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? Yeah. So they came and we're talking. And it was when they were trying to pass Chapter 78. And something like that was already into play. So we're just, you know, we're listening, tried to understand. Yeah. They came with their data to show us. And I said, that's the best thing you can do. Then I've had individuals that come in and said, you know what, listen, this is a safety issue. And it's not just affecting me right here in the city of Plainfield, but it's, affecting everybody across the state. So it's that bill idea. And when we get that bill idea, you know what? We try to look to see, is there something else already on the books like this and everything that we either amend, or is this a new law that's going into place? Mm-hmm. But the direct conversations, the direct concerns, and everything from our constituents is where we really try to make sure that we get it from. Yeah. And we take and have those conversations. Comes from you.
Absolutely. And, and being elected official for the people and listening to the individuals who you are elected to serve, that you're going to, I believe you're going to come to the best decision more times than not when
Absolutely.
When you do, listen and have their perspective and their feedback while you're having these caucuses and moving these bills forward, because as we know, this is a good segue into the next question, because we were talking about our youth, we're talking about laws and government, and I have an 18-year-old son and I have young nieces and nephews, and I find that very few of them understand our governmental process. They don't know how a bill becomes a law. Wow. And there's a lot of civics is not taught in school anymore, and if it's not something, my son was someone who kind of sought that out because of my position, and he was very interested in politics and government. So, yep. But some his friends and a lot of my young nieces and nephews. So, if just for the young people watching and listening, what's the process? For when a bill hits your desk or you're writing it, so getting it approved, because it's not just you writing it and saying, "Hey, this is the law." You have to get the approval from your colleagues in the assembly, and then it has to be passed through Senate. So, explain to us just the process of that.
It's something that doesn't happen overnight. I remember going into the legislature, and it was like, okay, sometimes your bill, you can have a great idea, and it sits there for years and everything. But it seems like it's simple. But it's just the process it has to go through, and it has to make sure that you got enough people to do this. So somebody comes to my office or on the phone, and they say, listen, I have an idea. So we get all the information, we talk about it, we figure out, what does it do and what would it do? And, who is it that it really is serving? If we change this, or if we add this, or if we put this on the books, then we'll take that and I send it down to Trenton, and we have individuals there that, that work down in our AMO office, it's the assembly office, and, they're looking at it, they're geared on it and tell them what we're trying to do. So they go out and they look at it, and they'll send me back some information. And it's really like written, oh, is this what you were talking about? Yeah. We read through it, we go through it, we look at it. I'll get back to the individuals that, said, hey, listen, is this what we're looking at? And they'll say yes. So then what ends up happening at that point is we drop the bill. So I'll take that legislation and I drop it, and now there's a number given to it. So at this point, it's also when that happens, that information gets introduced and everything, the bill idea. I also look for other legislators that may want to sign on to it. And say, hey, listen, co-sponsors. And like my running mate, Assemblyman Kennedy, I might go to him and say, hey, listen, this is something that, I had somebody come to me. Mm-hmm. Would you like to go and co-sponsor it with me? And he might say yes, or he may say no. Or we'll have,
You better say yes. No.
So we have prime sponsors and we have co-sponsors. So we have that. Then when the bill is introduced, I take it gets introduced, and I try to make sure also, because it has to pass both houses before it gets to the governor's desk. So I'm in the lower house, which is the assembly, and we have 80 members. So in our house, it'll go through 2 committee readings. So the first one, it gets assigned to a committee. At some point in time, we're asking the chair of the committee to please have the bill go before. Mm-hmm. Can you read it? They'll go through it. Might be some amendments. We get a lot of our lobbyists, and we'll get a lot of individuals. And our lobbyists represent a majority of the groups out there. Yeah. So they may contact and say, we don't like this. We'll get maybe the police or, fire or teachers union. They're like, I'm in support of it. We might get anybody. Yeah. I'm in support. I'm not in support. Laborers union, everybody. Yeah. So when that happens and everything, it get to the committee, there might be some amendments. So it's like, listen, you amended, we need to change a word. Just one word sometimes is all they're looking to do.
Yeah.
But you hear them, we work back and forth with it, gets out of the committee, moves from the committee, and then it might get assigned to a second committee, and it gets read again. So the bill usually is sent to a committee which studies it and makes changes it, and then these changes are called amendments. The committees have open meetings. Just like we vote openly, we have open meetings every week. I'm going to a transportation meeting this Monday. Mm-hmm. If the committee approves the bill, it's reported back to the House where it began, and then the title is read again. And then this bill goes for a second reading. Then after the second reading, it's debated for on the floor, and then it's voted on. We need, for us in our House, for the Assembly, we need 41 votes for it to get passed, mm-hmm. 41 or more. If the bill passes and receives majority, we have to then wait and make sure that the Senate does the same thing. So sometimes the Senate will go through the same bill, but they may have changes. And then it might come back to us again.
For the amendments.
With the amendments that the Senate made. So once both of us pass the same bill has to pass in both houses. Then it goes to the governor's desk. Yep. Sometimes the governor will just sign off on it. And then it takes its normal course at that point where it may come immediately, or it may take so many days after signing.
Yeah, or sometimes years too, depending on the bill.
Right. Well, before it gets to the governor's desk, before we even get to vote on it, it could take years. Mm-hmm. So we technically, our sessions are 2 year long because the Assembly, we're up every 2 years. Yep. So what ends up happening is the legislative session is a 2 year session. So if I have bills that I introduce during that time frame and they don't pass on both houses, then the lower house and the upper house, then what I have to do is the next session, I have to reintroduce that bill, and it's assigned a new bill number. So it could be reintroduced, and there have been bills that I've seen that literally have been there for like 4 or 5 sessions. It doesn't have enough votes or anything for us to get it passed at this point, or it's still being worked on. Yeah. And sometimes it takes time.
And it's a tough process because, you know, what the people in the 22nd Legislative District want may not be the same as people in South Jersey or North Jersey. So, and, you know, those representatives are going to have their input based off of the people they represent. So it's to your point, Assemblywoman, it's a lengthy process. You know, much respect and kudos for all that you do and your colleagues do, because it's not easy and there's a lot of compromise, and I don't think that people realize how much compromise has to be amongst your colleagues in order to get both houses to pass the same exact bill. And to your point, amendments come back and forth, and you know it's a process, and it's a process worth, you know, when you have a good bill and a bill that's going to have positive impact and true, you know, benefit the people that you serve. You know, it's important to fight for it, and even if it's, you know, a lengthy process, you got to keep grinding and keep going.
And then after both houses pass, it still has to it goes to the governor's desk. Governor sometimes doesn't always just say, okay, here, I'm going to sign.
He has the ability to veto it.
He has the ability to say, no, I'm not. Let it sit there and let the time just stand. And
pocket veto, I think it's called.
Pocket veto, or he can say, listen, I'm taking this part out, I'll approve the rest of it. Then it has to come back to us again to vote on, you know, what he has done. So it's a process. But when you communicate together and everybody is, you know, taking it and making sure that it's fair for everybody, our bills are getting passed.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to the Rahway All Day Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate us, like, and follow on all major podcast platforms. Your support means the world to us and helps us share more with our incredible community. Stay tuned for the next episode of Rahway All Day. We've got even more exciting stories and conversations coming your way.